Imagine waking up to find out the person you trusted the most was never who they said they were. A quiet college girl vanishes into the night, leaving behind only a shattered phone and a final, unsent message. He's here. But the real horror begins when investigators learn she wasn't running from a stranger. She was running from someone already inside her life, who had been watching her for years, who built an entire identity just to get close. And why did every clue point back to the one place she thought was safe, home? Tonight, we uncover a truth so twisted, so unbelievable, that even the killer didn't see the ending coming. Because in this case, the monster wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was sitting at the family table. Welcome to Night Crime Stories Hub. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. Emily Carter locked the cafe door behind her, the metal frame clicking shut with the faint finality of a routine she had followed for nearly 2 years. The evening air was colder than usual, brushing against her cheeks as she wrapped her coat tighter around her thin frame. It had been another quiet shift, the kind she usually liked. No loud customers, no lingering stares, just the rhythmic clatter of cups and the hum of a coffee machine that never failed her. But tonight, something weighed on her, pulling her attention to the phone in her hand. She kept glancing at the screen, hoping for a message that didn't come, or perhaps hoping it wouldn't. The unsaved number had been texting her for weeks, each message a little more intrusive than the last. Earlier that evening, during her break, she had finally typed a reply, just a few words, but deleted them before pressing send. Her fingers had trembled as if the act of responding would make everything real. Emily walked down Brookline Street, the familiar route home illuminated by dim streetlights that flickered as though struggling to stay alive. Normally, she would take the longer, safer road, the one with traffic and noise and comfort in numbers. But tonight, she stopped at the corner, staring at the narrow alleyway cutting between the old bookstore and an abandoned hardware shop. She never walked through there, not once. Yet she stepped forward anyway. Her pace quickened, her breath shortened. The shadows seemed wrong. Too still, too deep, too expectant. A passing car splashed light across her worried face, catching the moment she turned, startled, as if someone behind her had whispered her name. Minutes later, the cafe manager, heading home after checking the register, noticed something on the ground near the alley entrance. Emily's phone. Screen shattered, case cracked, lying face down on the concrete as if someone had stomped on it. The manager picked it up, calling out her name with a trembling voice that dissolved into the night. When detectives arrived, they examined the device under the beam of a crime scene flashlight. The phone refused to turn on, but the final notification glowed faintly through the fractured display. An unsent text sat waiting in Emily's message window, typed only moments before she vanished. Just 3 words. He's here. The detective swallowed hard, lifting his eyes toward the alley's darkness, where a single footprint waited for them. The discovery of Emily's shattered phone left investigators with more questions than answers, and by the following morning, the search of her apartment began. The place was small, neat, lived in, and filled with quiet details that suggested a girl who preferred order over chaos. But the silence inside carried something heavier now, something unsettled. Detective Sarah Monroe moved slowly through the rooms, studying the photographs on the walls, the textbooks stacked on the desk, the small plants by the window. Nothing seemed out of place until she noticed a leather-bound notebook tucked beneath Emily's pillow. It wasn't labeled, but when she opened it, her breath hitched. It wasn't a diary, it was a log of fear. Each entry was short, frantic, scribbled in uneven handwriting. Emily had been receiving threatening notes for weeks, notes that grew sharper, darker, closer. He found me again. I shouldn't have come back. Someone is watching the apartment. The further Monroe read, the more obvious it became that Emily had been hiding a storm behind her quiet smile. A torn page sat in the middle of the journal, ripped so roughly the fibers still curled outward. Only half a sentence remained. I think he used to be, the rest was gone. When Olivia Reed arrived, eyes red from crying, detectives hoped she could fill the gaps. She and Emily had been inseparable since freshman year, yet even she looked stunned by the entries. She traced the ink with trembling fingers, whispering Emily's name as though saying it gently might somehow pull her back. "She didn't tell you about this?" Monroe asked. Olivia shook her head. She said she was trying to get away from someone dangerous, someone from her past. But she never said who. Monroe showed her one of the threatening notes recovered from Emily's desk drawer. Just 5 words scrawled in jagged strokes. "You can't outrun the truth." Olivia stared at the handwriting for a long moment. Too long. Her expression shifted, recognition flickering through her eyes before she forced it back down. "You know who wrote this?" Monroe said quietly. Olivia's breathing quickened. She gripped the edge of the table, knuckles pale, and shook her head violently. "I can't," she whispered. "I'm not saying his name." Olivia's refusal to reveal the name behind the threatening notes left detectives with only one clear direction to move in: the people closest to Emily. And at the top of that list was Daniel Hayes, her ex-boyfriend, a name mentioned twice in Emily's journal, both times followed by jagged lines that looked like they were carved in anger rather than written. Detective Monroe and her partner, Officer Blake Turner, found Daniel at his small apartment on Hawthorne Lane. He answered the door too quickly, as if he'd been standing behind it, waiting. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair unkempt, and for a moment, he simply stared at them, breathing unevenly. "We need to ask you a few questions about Emily Carter," Monroe said. Daniel stepped aside. "I figured you'd come." Inside, the apartment was cluttered but not dirty. Papers strewn across the coffee table, takeaway boxes stacked near the sink, a half-finished drawing of Emily taped above his desk. Daniel noticed Monroe staring and quickly turned the drawing face down. "I saw her that night," he admitted before they even asked. "But she was fine when I left her." "Where did you see her?" Turner pressed. "Outside the cafe. I just wanted to talk." His voice cracked slightly. "She didn't want to. She said she was scared of someone following her." His alibi came out flawless, rehearsed like lines from a script. He claimed he drove straight home afterward, watched a movie alone, and slept. Everything too smooth, too perfect. Monroe's instincts prickled. Later, CCTV footage confirmed her suspicion. Daniel's car had circled the block near the cafe at least 3 times, each pass slower than the one before. When confronted with the footage, Daniel's composure faltered. His jaw clenched, his hands shook. That's when Monroe noticed the scratches on his forearm. Angry red marks, fresh, spaced like fingernail gouges. "Where'd you get those?" she asked. Daniel looked down as if seeing them for the first time. "It's nothing. I slipped on some stairs." "Try again," Monroe said, her voice firm. Daniel's facade collapsed. His breathing grew erratic, his eyes darting to the door as though considering an escape. Finally, he sank into the nearest chair, burying his face in his hands. "It wasn't me," he whispered, voice hoarse. "I swear to God, I didn't touch her." Monroe leaned in. "Then tell us who did." Daniel lifted his head slowly, eyes filled with something between fear and guilt. "I know who took her." Daniel's confession shifted the investigation into darker, unfamiliar territory. Up until now, detectives had focused on Emily's immediate circle: family, friends, ex-lovers. But the way Daniel spoke, trembling, avoiding Monroe's eyes, made one thing painfully clear. Emily's danger didn't start the night she disappeared. It began long before. "He called himself R," Daniel said, voice barely above a whisper. "She met him online 2 years ago. First, she said he was charming. Then he got obsessive, controlling. She blocked him, changed accounts, everything. But he always found her." Detective Monroe absorbed each word, her mind stitching together the journal entries, the threatening notes, Olivia's fear, and now this. A stalker, a digital ghost lurking long before the danger became physical. Back at the station, technicians unlocked Emily's old laptop, retrieved from the bottom drawer of her apartment desk. The device was slow, outdated, but still held traces of the terror she lived with. Turner clicked open her messages. The first one appeared harmless, the second unsettling. By the 10th, Monroe felt a chill slide down her spine. The final messages from R were unmistakably menacing. You can't hide from what you did. I know where you go at night. You belong to me. Emily hadn't told anyone about these. Not Daniel, not Olivia. But her browser history revealed something else. She had been searching for ways to trace an anonymous user, digging into online forums about digital footprints, stalking victims, and identity fraud. The last search she made, 2 days before she vanished, sent a ripple of unease across the room. How to stop someone who knows your real name? What did she do? Turner murmured, staring at the messages. Monroe had no answer, but the fear Emily carried was unmistakably real. Technicians soon uncovered a deleted folder containing screenshots Emily had taken herself, images of chat logs where R threatened her, claimed he knew things about her past no stranger should. As detectives pieced together a timeline, another officer rushed into the room, breathless. We pulled new footage from the camera near the cafe. Monroe followed him to the monitor. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Emily walked down the street, phone in hand, glancing back nervously. And behind her, half shrouded in darkness, walked a hooded man keeping distance, but too close to ignore. Then the officer paused the video. The man lifted his hand slightly, revealing a thin metal bracelet glinting under the streetlight, identical to one Emily's father wore every day. The moment detectives saw the bracelet in the CCTV footage, the investigation shifted again, back toward someone they had hoped was only a frightened, grieving parent. Robert Carter, Emily's father, the man who stood in front of the cameras pleading for answers. The man whose trembling voice broke as he begged for his daughter to come home. Detective Monroe and Officer Turner arrived at the Carter residence just after noon. The house looked peaceful from the outside, freshly painted walls, trimmed hedges, a porch swing gently swaying in the afternoon breeze. But Monroe had learned long ago that a calm exterior often hid the darkest truths. Robert answered the door slowly. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Any news about Emily?" "We have questions," Monroe said, stepping inside before he could hesitate. "About the night she disappeared." As they entered the study, hints of tension seeped through the walls. Family photos lined the shelves. Emily at 6 holding a trophy, Emily at 10 with missing teeth, Emily at 16 wearing a birthday crown. But in none of them did she stand close to her father. Always angled slightly away, always stiff, always distant. Monroe noticed. "So," Turner began, "neighbors reported hearing an argument between you and Emily 2 nights before she went missing. Loud enough that someone considered calling the police." Robert's jaw tightened. "It wasn't an argument. It was a misunderstanding." "What kind of misunderstanding ends with Emily leaving the house crying?" Monroe pressed. Robert looked away, fiddling with the bracelet on his wrist, the same one from the footage. "She accused me of things. Lies planted in her head by people who never liked me. Such as," he shook his head, "family matters. Not relevant." Monroe's gaze drifted across the room until something caught her eye. A slight discoloration on the bottom drawer of Robert's desk, as though the wood had been opened more often than the others. She knelt, tugged it open, and found a smaller hidden compartment inside. Inside lay a single photograph. Emily, around 8 years old, smiling at the camera with a missing front tooth. A red circle had been drawn around her face. A thick line slashed across the edges, as if someone tried to erase the background entirely. Robert lunged forward. "You have no right." Monroe held the photo up. "Why was this hidden?" "It's old," he snapped. "Emily drew on it when she was a child." But the ink was fresh. Too fresh. Back at the station, forensics worked quickly. Fingerprint results returned faster than expected. The threatening note Olivia recognized, the one with jagged writing, held prints. Turner read the report twice, hoping he misread it. But the match was unmistakable. Robert Carter's fingerprints covered the note. The fingerprint match shattered any illusion of Robert's innocence. Detective Monroe returned to the Carter home that same evening, this time with a full search warrant. The late sunlight cast long shadows across the living room floor as officers moved through the house with deliberate precision. Robert followed them, protesting, insisting they were making a mistake, but the tension in his voice betrayed a fear deeper than anger. The basement was cold, the kind of cold that smelled of old concrete and secrets buried beneath dust. Monroe swept her flashlight across the cluttered shelves, the broken tools, the boxes stacked haphazardly in corners. Something felt wrong. The air was too still, too heavy. Officer Turner's voice broke the silence. "Detective, you need to see this." He was kneeling near the far corner of the basement, where a section of the floorboard looked warped. As Monroe approached, she noticed the wood had been forcibly pried up at one edge. Turner lifted it carefully. A dark stain spread across the concrete beneath it. Dried, cracked, unmistakably blood. Robert froze on the stairs. That's old. Years old. Emily scraped her knee down here when she was a kid, but Monroe already knew that wasn't true. The discoloration was too sharp, the outlines too defined, fresh enough that the metallic scent still lingered faintly in the cold air. Forensics confirmed it within the hour. The blood was Emily's, not from childhood, not from years ago. Recent, very recent. Robert's face drained of color. "I didn't hurt her," he whispered. "You're twisting everything. You don't understand." She was confused, unstable. "She? Where is she?" Monroe demanded. "I don't know." His voice cracked with a desperation that sounded like guilt. As officers spread through the basement, searching for anything else Robert might have hidden, Turner called out again. He held something small in his gloved hands. Delicate, silver, broken cleanly in two. Emily's necklace. The one she wore every day. The one she never took off. Monroe felt a chill crawl up her spine. This wasn't just evidence. This was violence. Personal. Close. She turned to Robert. "You're coming with us." His eyes widened. He took a step back, shaking his head as officers approached. "No, you're wrong. I'm not the one you want. There are things you don't know." Before the handcuffs clicked, Monroe's phone buzzed sharply. An unknown number. Voicemail. She pressed play. A distorted voice crackled through the speaker. "You're arresting the wrong man." The voicemail replayed through Detective Monroe's mind long after Robert Carter was taken into custody. The voice was distorted, mechanical, impossible to trace. Yet the urgency in it didn't feel like a prank or a distraction. Felt like a warning. The team worked through the night to source the call's origin. Just after dawn, a technician located the ping. An abandoned farmhouse 15 miles outside town. A place long swallowed by weeds, silence, and a reputation locals avoided. Monroe and Turner drove out with 2 patrol units. The gravel crunched under the tires as the house appeared. A skeleton of rotted wood and broken windows, the porch half collapsed, the front door hanging crooked. It looked untouched for decades, but the door was unlocked. Inside, dust blanketed the floor, except for one unmistakable detail. Footprints. Fresh ones. Leading toward a narrow hallway. Monroe's pulse quickened as she followed them, her flashlight sweeping across peeling wallpaper and warped floorboards. At the end of the hall was a door that didn't match the rest. Newer wood, a modern lock. Turner forced it open. The smell hit them first. Stale air, chemicals, something metallic. The beam of Monroe's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating a cramped, windowless room. Her breath caught. The walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Emily at age 5 on her first day of school. Emily at 9 riding a bike. Emily at 13 leaving a mall with friends. Emily at 14 sitting alone in her room, unaware of the camera aimed through her window. Emily at 20 walking to class. Emily 2 weeks ago, stepping out of the cafe. Every year of her life documented, cataloged, watched. A timeline stretched across an entire wall. Dates written beneath each photo in a sharp, obsessive script. Some photos were circled. Others were crossed out. A few had notes beneath them. "She doesn't see me. She's starting to remember." I'm close now. Turner swallowed hard. This is years of stalking. In the far corner hung something even more disturbing. Strands of hair, long, brown, unmistakably Emily's, taped carefully to the wall beneath a label. 2009 present. Monroe felt a heaviness settle in her chest. This wasn't madness born overnight. Someone had been building this shrine long before Emily ever realized she was in danger. She moved toward a table with a single camera lying on its side. Dust hadn't settled over it yet. Someone had been here recently. Very recently. Bag it, Monroe ordered. A forensic officer lifted the camera carefully, shining a UV light across the surface. Fingerprints glowed along the lens, distinct, clear. Running it now, the officer said. Minutes later, his expression changed, tension tightening his shoulders. He turned the screen toward Monroe. The print belongs to Olivia Reed. The drive back from the abandoned farmhouse was silent, the weight of the discovery pressing down on the investigation like a tightening vice. The detective replayed the moment they lifted the camera from the hidden room, how the smudge of a single fingerprint had abruptly redirected the case. Olivia's fingerprint. After the chaos surrounding Robert's near arrest and the anonymous warning that halted it, this new revelation felt like another trap. Yet another truth buried beneath years of carefully constructed lies. At the station, Olivia sat trembling, her eyes red and unfocused, as though she'd been running from a nightmare she could no longer escape. When the detective placed the photo of the hidden room before her, she didn't deny it. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she exhaled shakily, as if someone had finally opened a door she'd been pounding on for years. I followed her, she whispered, voice cracking. But not because I wanted to hurt her. I was trying to protect her. From him. The detective leaned forward. From who, Olivia? Who built that room? Who stalked her? Olivia shook her head violently. You're all looking in the wrong direction. It wasn't Robert. It wasn't Daniel. None of you understand what Emily was dealing with. Tears slid down her cheeks, smudging the mascara that had already bled beneath her eyes. She told me everything. She trusted me. Her hands clenched together so tightly her knuckles turned white. She seemed trapped between guilt and desperation, as though her own confession might destroy her. She found something, Olivia continued, something she wasn't supposed to know. She told me she'd uncovered a secret, one that would tear everything apart if it ever came out. That's why she was scared. That's why she kept trying to run. The detective felt a familiar chill. What secret? Olivia hesitated, her expression twisting with anguish. Emily said someone close to her, someone in her inner circle, wasn't who he pretended to be anymore. She said he'd changed, that he was dangerous. She swallowed hard. She said she finally had proof. The detective pressed gently, sensing Olivia's resolve crumbling. Who was she talking about? Olivia froze, breath hitching in her throat. When she finally spoke, her voice had shrunk to a trembling whisper. Fragile, terrified, yet absolutely certain. Her brother. The room seemed to stop moving. Even Olivia looked horrified by her own words, as if naming him had dragged something monstrous into the light. And the detective suddenly realized this investigation was nowhere near the end. It was only now beginning. The detective left the interview room with Olivia's final whispered word echoing through his mind like a warning. Her brother. It was the last direction anyone had expected the case to turn. Yet as the team dug deeper, the pieces began to connect with chilling ease. Emily's stepbrother, Liam Carter. Quiet, polite, nearly invisible in every conversation, had somehow slipped beneath the radar from the very beginning. When officers arrived at the Carter residence once again, Robert sat motionless on the couch, shock lingering from the accusations he'd just been freed from. But upstairs, behind a locked bedroom door, they found the world Liam had been hiding. The room was meticulously clean, almost sterile, yet the walls revealed a different truth. Dozens of drawings covered the surface, charcoal sketches of Emily at various ages, captured with unsettling precision. Some were innocent. Others bordered on frantic, the lines sharp and aggressive, as though drawn in moments of obsession he couldn't control. A detective lifted one of the sketches, noticing Emily's eyes shaded completely black. "This isn't admiration," he muttered. "This is fixation." As they searched the room further, they uncovered disciplinary reports from 2 previous schools. Both expulsions involved violent incidents, fights that escalated into something far worse than teenage aggression. Liam's records painted a history of suppressed rage, hidden neatly behind his quiet exterior. The family had kept these incidents silent, hoping new environments would change him. They never did. Meanwhile, forensic teams analyzed the shoe impressions recovered from the alley behind Emily's apartment. The comparison came back fast, too fast. Liam's boots, found tucked neatly under his bed, matched every pattern, every worn groove, every distinctive cut. The detective felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. Liam had been there the night Emily disappeared. With mounting evidence, officers prepared to arrest him. But when they returned to the house, Liam's door hung open, curtains blowing inward as though he'd slipped out only moments earlier. His phone lay abandoned on the floor, screen shattered. Panic spread through the team as they searched every room. Then an officer called out from the backyard. A backpack had been left beneath the withered oak tree, its zipper half open, a dark red stain seeping through the fabric. Liam was gone. Only his blood-stained warning remained. The discovery of Liam's blood-stained backpack shifted the entire investigation's momentum. Detectives knew he was running, desperate, and far more dangerous than anyone had realized. The trail he left, broken branches, scattered footprints, and torn scraps of fabric, pulled the search team steadily toward the edge of Ravenwood Forest, a place locals described with a single uneasy phrase: the forest of no return. As officers crossed beneath its towering canopy, the air grew colder, heavier, as though the woods themselves were swallowing sound. About a mile in, they found the first sign they were close. A small clearing bore the marks of a makeshift camp. A smoldering fire pit, a bed of flattened leaves, and food wrappers arranged with an almost obsessive order. But the detail that froze the detective in place was the delicate silver bracelet hanging from a low branch. Emily's bracelet, the one she never took off. It twisted gently in the wind like a silent accusation. Someone had placed it there intentionally, either as a message or a warning. Nearby, inside a waterproof pouch tucked beneath a fallen log, officers discovered a small, tattered diary. Liam's handwriting filled every page in frantic strokes, spilling out his warped devotion to Emily. He wrote about watching her, protecting her, and punishing anyone he believed threatened their connection. The final entries grew darker, speaking of betrayal, fear, and the absolute certainty that Emily belonged to him and no one else. While search teams fanned outward, another detective called out. Shallow mounds of freshly turned earth were scattered between the trees. 6 of them. The sight sent a ripple of dread through the officers. Each grave looked hastily dug, as if Liam expected to return soon. Forensics marked the locations, their faces tense with the possibility of what or who might lie beneath. As the investigation pressed deeper into the forest, radio signals weakened. The light dimmed. The silence thickened until even the crunch of leaves underfoot seemed intrusive. The detective leading the team paused, sensing they were no longer alone. Something shifted in the distance. A faint rustle, too deliberate to be the wind. The team exchanged tense glances, instincts sharpening. If someone had survived this long, it meant Liam hadn't gone far, or that he intended to return. Every second suddenly mattered. The detective signaled for silence, raising a hand as he listened. The forest seemed to hold its breath around them, branches arching overhead like a closing cage. The danger was still near. Then it came. A sound so soft it might have been mistaken for an animal. A fragile, wavering cry. Human. The weak cry echoing through Ravenwood Forest pushed the search team forward with a frantic urgency. Branches whipped against their jackets as they followed the sound to a half-buried metal hatch camouflaged beneath dirt and leaves. The padlock had been smashed recently, as if someone fled in a hurry. When officers forced the door open, a wave of cold, Stale air rose from below, air untouched for days. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow staircase descending into an underground bunker Liam had built in secret. At the bottom, curled against a concrete wall, lay Emily Carter. She was barely conscious, her wrists bound, her breathing shallow, her skin bruised from restraint. The detective dropped to his knees, calling her name until her eyes fluttered open. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by a wave of terror. "He's coming back," she whispered, voice almost gone. Medics freed her carefully, fearing she might collapse before making it to the surface. Once outside, wrapped in emergency blankets and trembling from shock, Emily finally began to speak. Her words were broken at first, but slowly the story poured out. One more horrifying than anyone had imagined. Liam hadn't just abducted her. He had planned their disappearance for years. "He said we were meant to start a new life together," she whispered. "Somewhere no one would find us." The detective listened, chilled by the quiet certainty in her voice, as if Liam's delusion had echoed in that bunker long enough to become a shadow around her. But the darkest truth came next. Emily revealed she had been keeping a secret, one she had discovered only weeks before vanishing. Liam wasn't her stepbrother at all. He wasn't even connected to the Carter family by blood or adoption. He was the anonymous stalker she'd met online at 17, the one who vanished after she reported him, the one she thought she had escaped. Over the years, he reinvented himself under new identities, eventually inserting himself into her life by attaching himself to her mother's new marriage. "He changed everything about himself," Emily said. "His name, his past, his face in old photos. He made sure no one would ever link him to what he was before." Slowly, the pieces fell into place. The obsessive drawings, the hidden surveillance room, the unexplained gaps in Liam's records. He hadn't entered the family by accident. He had infiltrated it with precision, patience, and a devotion twisted far beyond obsession. Before Emily could say more, an officer rushed toward the detective, panic tightening his voice. Liam had not been found at the campsite. He wasn't in the bunker. He wasn't anywhere near the graves. The forest had gone still again. And then, from somewhere deep between the trees, a single gunshot shattered the silence. The single gunshot sent officers sprinting through the trees, flashlights slicing across the darkness as they followed the echo's fading trail. The forest seemed to close in around them, each step heavier, each breath sharper. Finally, in a small clearing near a fallen oak, they found him. Liam Carter lay motionless on the cold ground, a gun resting loosely in his hand, his body partially slumped against the tree trunk. For a moment it looked exactly like what everyone expected, a suicide born from a collapsing fantasy. But something felt wrong. The detective crouched beside the body, noting the unusual angle of the wound, the absence of gunpowder residue on Liam's hands, and the faint drag marks in the dirt. Liam hadn't died where he sat. Someone had positioned him there. Someone who wanted the forest to tell a story that wasn't true. Back at the forensic tent, the examination confirmed it. The trajectory didn't match a self-inflicted shot. The pressure pattern on the trigger came from a different hand, larger, stronger, deliberate. And on the side of the gun, faint but unmistakable under chemical light, was a partial fingerprint. It didn't belong to Liam. It didn't belong to any officer. It belonged to Robert Carter, Emily's father. The revelation hit the team like a blast of cold air. Robert had claimed innocence, grief, concern. But the evidence painted an entirely different picture, one of control, manipulation, and carefully engineered chaos. When detectives confronted him, Robert didn't deny it. Instead, a chilling calm settled over him, as though he had been expecting this moment. He told them Liam was unstable, dangerous, unpredictable. "He needed to be stopped," Robert said, his voice flat, but when pressed, the cracks widened. Beneath Robert's carefully maintained facade lay years of secrets. Crimes he feared Emily was finally ready to expose. Liam had been his solution, a boy desperate for belonging, easy to mold, easier still to weaponize. Through documents found in Robert's study, contracts, falsified records, Emails written from anonymous accounts. The truth surfaced. Robert hadn't just known Liam's real identity. He had used him. He fed Liam's obsession, tightened it, directed it. He allowed Liam into the family not to protect Emily, but to control the narrative around her, to manipulate the threats she faced, and ultimately to ensure she could never reveal what she knew about his past abuse. Liam's stalking, the messages, the surveillance, it had all been allowed, encouraged, sometimes even orchestrated. And when Liam became a liability, when Emily survived long enough to tell the truth, Robert silenced him the only way he knew how, permanently. The confession was enough. The case formally closed with Robert Carter charged as the real mastermind behind Emily's disappearance, Liam's death, and the web of lies that had ensnared their family for years. But just when Emily began to believe the nightmare was finally over, her phone buzzed on the hospital nightstand. A new message from an unknown number lit up the screen. This isn't over. If this case kept you captivated, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We upload new crime case videos every night. Until then, stay alert, stay aware.